It's only chapter 3, and the mysterious proper nouns are already starting to pile up. Not all as it seems at Hailsham. Let's figure out what's going on. This is Chapter by Chapter. If you find yourself confused by the proper nouns, don't worry. The characters are too. In fact, they're so confused that Kathy risks a private conversation with Tommy at the pond, something she talked about in Chapter 2 as being very risky as it produces a lot of eavesdropping and gossip and rumors and whatnot. So some of these proper nouns they talk about. First, let's focus on the exchanges. We've already heard about the exchanges. This is where students 4 times a year take their best artwork, they give it to their guardians, the guardians give them tokens, and they can buy each other's works. However, there's this sort of unspoken aspect to the exchanges called the gallery. And in fact, we're told that the gallery is, speaking about it, is the equivalent of saying a swear word or using a guardian's nickname to their face. No one really talks about it, but what happens at the gallery is this woman named Madame, because she's French, apparently, comes, or maybe from Belgium, comes to the school and takes their best artwork and just leaves with it. That's all she's there to do. She's one of the few people who visit the school in a car, but she takes their best artwork for something called the gallery. And they really don't know anything about it, and they really don't ever bring it up except in private conversation between them. And all of this is somehow connected to something called the donations. And we don't really have any information about that so far. So there's our big kind of proper nouns that the students are talking about. And as we read, these pieces will start to fall into place. But for now, if you're confused, rest assured, that's okay. There is one thing I want to focus on, though, or one person, and that is Madame. So this Madame is one of the few adults we hear about who is not a guardian. And like I said earlier, she collects the different pieces of art and takes the best of the best for the gallery. And the students only see her for a couple hours on some random days throughout the years. And she doesn't talk to them, but Kathy has a run-in with Madame earlier in her time at Hailsham. And it all has to do with her and Ruth and a couple of their friends coming up with a theory that Madame is actually afraid of them because she behaves very strange around them. And they think that she might just be snooty at first, but Ruth insists that they're actually scary, that these kids themselves are actually scary to this woman. So they come up with a theory to test it. Basically, they stake out when she's going to show up, and when she does, they all walk right toward her and kind of surround her without, touching her or anything, but just surround her. Is kind of this game, a joke, really, but the outcome surprises them. Listen to this. As she came to a halt, I glanced quickly at her face, as did the others, I'm sure. And I can still see it now, the shudder she seemed to be suppressing, the real dread that one of us would accidentally brush against her. And though we just kept on walking, we all felt it. It was like we'd walked from the sun right into a chilly shade. Ruth had been right. Madame was afraid of us, but she was afraid of us in the same way someone might be afraid of spiders. We hadn't been ready for that. It had never occurred to us to wonder how we would feel being seen like that, being spiders. So Kathy has this sort of nagging suspicion about these things that are happening at the school. And that's why when Tommy tells her about the conversation he has with Miss Lucy, she's so drawn to it because this might be the missing piece to solving her mystery. And really the last thing we need to focus on in this chapter is that conversation between Tommy and Miss Lucy and where Kathy and Tommy are going to go from here. We already get a little bit of information about this conversation between Miss Lucy and Tommy in Chapter 2. We've established that Tommy is basically released from his duty of being creative and that this is a very foreign concept to Kathy, one that at first she can't even believe, and that's why she goes out to the pond to talk to him further about it. And the conversation gets weirder and weirder the more we hear about it from Tommy. The thing that really stands out to Tommy during this conversation is not the tone of Miss Lucy's voice, but the fact that she is shaking. in anger, that she is physically shaking, not angry at him, but at some situation. And when Kathy presses Tommy for more details, all Tommy can come up with is that she said something that we weren't being taught enough, something like that. Now, this is a weird thing to hear about Hailsham students. From the very beginning of the book, we've been told how great this school is, and obviously they have some pretty high standards for their academics, especially their arts programs. And yet, Miss Lucy, the guardian, is saying they've not been taught enough. And this is the sort of trigger for Kathy to think back on that conversation, or that day with Madame, when her, Ruth, and their friends had seen themselves as spiders in her eyes. And it seems like Kathy has always kind of thought something is up, something is going on here. And Tommy has just kind of been thrown into it. But either way, the two of them are together, and very Nancy Drew Hardy Boys-esque. We have a mystery on our hands all of a sudden in this chapter, and some characters that are set out to find something about it. And I really love that Ishiguro sets it up this way, because I find myself much like the characters in the novel wanting to figure out what's going on here. And there's a really telling conversation at the end of this chapter about Kathy realizing something, realizing what it's like to be different in this world. And I think it's worth pointing out that this conversation happens in second person. And one of the things that makes this novel so successful for me is how it talks to the reader and how it draws the reader into it. But we'll see more of that in the coming chapters. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this dive into chapter 3. Keep on reading, keep doing your homework, or reading for fun, whatever you're doing. Don't just watch these videos. It's a fantastic book. There's a link in the description if you need one. I can't recommend it highly enough, and my videos are not doing it complete justice. It's just here to clean up questions and start conversations. So keep doing your reading, and I hope to see you in chapter 4. Have a good one.